Briggs slammed his palm on the table so hard that the entire room seemed to flinch and shake. The sound cracked through the silence like a whip snapping in the air, echoing off the glass walls of the conference room and bouncing back to us. "You're fired, Laurel," he snarled, his face turning a deep shade of red with anger that felt almost rehearsed, like he had practiced this moment in the mirror beforehand and perfected his delivery. I was sitting at the long conference table surrounded by 20 colleagues from various departments. All of them stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with me or acknowledge what was happening. Some looked down at their laptops. Others pretended to check their phones intently. My vision blurred for a moment, but I forced myself to stay calm and composed despite the shock. Security guards appeared at the door within seconds, as if they had been waiting outside the entire time for this signal. I kept my face completely blank and neutral, but inside something fractured into pieces. And then it hardened into something else entirely. Something sharp and focused. Something dangerous and calculated. I stood up slowly, gathered my things with steady hands, and walked toward the door. Everyone's eyes followed me as I moved, but nobody said a word. The silence felt louder than any noise could have been. It was deafening. The 2 guards escorted me down the hallway I had walked countless times before, every single day for 3 years. The carpet was gray and industrial, stained in places from coffee spills and wear. The walls were painted a boring beige that seemed designed to drain color from people's faces. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead with that irritating buzz that you never quite get used to. People peeked over their cubicles as I passed, watching my perp walk like it was entertainment on a boring Tuesday afternoon. I could feel their pity, their fear, their relief that it wasn't them being escorted out by security in front of everyone. Some people looked genuinely sad and sympathetic. Others seemed almost satisfied, like this was the most interesting thing that had happened all week at the office. My hands trembled slightly as we walked, but my thoughts were razor sharp and clear and focused. I knew this wasn't random anger. This wasn't Briggs losing his temper over something I had done wrong. This was choreography. This was planned and calculated. Briggs had orchestrated this moment carefully and deliberately over weeks. He needed a public sacrifice. He needed someone to blame when leadership asked difficult questions about the department's declining performance and productivity issues. And somehow I had become his target. As we reached the elevator, I realized something crucial that made my blood run cold. He had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The elevator doors slid closed behind me with a soft hiss, trapping me inside the metal box. I stood alone in that elevator, descending toward the ground floor and whatever came after. The elevator was cold and sterile. The walls were mirrored, and I could see myself reflected back at me from every angle, multiplied endlessly. I looked calm on the outside, composed and dignified, but inside I was burning with something fierce. I whispered something under my breath that I meant with every fiber of my being and every cell in my body. "You just made the worst mistake of your life, Briggs." I meant it completely and absolutely. And I already knew exactly how I was going to prove it to him. The words felt like a promise I was making to myself. The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft ding. The doors opened smoothly. I walked out into the lobby and kept walking, heading toward the main exit without looking back. Through the glass doors, I could see the parking lot and my car waiting for me like a refuge. I didn't look back at the building. Let me tell you who I was before this happened. My name is Laurel Pierce, and I'm 34 years old. I was the backbone of our operations department at Harrison Tech Solutions, though most people never notice my contributions. I was the quiet one who did her work, the thorough one who paid attention to details, the overlooked one who kept things running. I was born in this city 34 years ago on a cold December morning. I went to local schools and played soccer in high school. I studied business management in college and graduated with a 3.8 GPA. After graduation, I bounced between 3 different jobs before landing at Harrison Tech Solutions 5 years ago. I handled the workflows that kept everything running smoothly and efficiently. I fixed problems that nobody else could solve or even understand. I documented systems that other people didn't bother to learn or care about. While louder people claimed credit for success and took bows at important meetings, I made sure nothing fell apart behind the scenes. I made sure the trains ran on time. I had worked there for 3 years in my current role, climbing slowly from coordinator to senior specialist. I wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. I wasn't loud or domineering. I didn't go to happy hours with coworkers or make close friends at the office. But I was essential, even if almost nobody recognized it. Then Briggs Turner became my director in September. He arrived on a Monday morning with a firm handshake and a confident smile that made my stomach uneasy immediately. Briggs was 52 years old, married with 2 adult children, and had spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder at different companies across the country. He loved power more than he loved competency or doing the right thing. He collected fear like other people collected trophies or awards on their mantles. He made people nervous just by walking into a room, and they would shuffle papers nervously. And for some reason that I couldn't quite understand, he hated me specifically from day one. I think it was because I wasn't afraid of him or intimidated. I didn't laugh at his jokes or seek his approval and attention. I didn't compliment him or ask him for advice I didn't need. I just did my work well and kept moving forward. That made him uncomfortable in ways he couldn't articulate. Someone who wasn't intimidated by him was a threat to his authority and control. He needed everyone to fear him. Without that fear, he felt powerless. So he decided to fix that problem by targeting me. I spent that evening making one phone call to someone I trusted. I called Evelyn Rhodes, a board member who had mentored me early in my career, back when I was just starting out at the company 5 years ago. We had worked closely for about 8 months before she moved into her board position. We hadn't spoken in 3 years since she left the operations department. But she answered on the second ring like she had been expecting my call somehow. I told her what had happened in detail and chronologically. I told her about Briggs and Wyatt and the manufactured case against me. I told her about the pattern of behavior over months. I told her about the way he had orchestrated everything carefully. She listened without interrupting me once. When I finished, she said one sentence that changed everything about my situation. "Send me everything you have," she said coldly and firmly. "This isn't about revenge. This is about standards." I knew then that I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. I had an ally inside the system. I spent the next 2 days organizing every piece of evidence I had carefully collected over the past several months. I had emails where Briggs rewrote my work and claimed credit for my accomplishments. I had documents that were altered after I submitted them, with timestamps showing the exact changes. I had recordings of him shifting blame to me in front of witnesses and colleagues. I had training files that Wyatt never actually completed, unsigned by him despite notes saying he finished. I had screenshots of his instant messages where he told other employees to ignore me. I had calendar invitations to meetings I wasn't invited to. I compiled everything into a single digital file, organized chronologically, with clear labels and explanations for each item. I made it so precise and clear that there was no possible way to deny what had happened. I printed everything on high-quality paper, organized it into folders with color-coded tabs and sections, and sent copies to Evelyn with detailed notes explaining the significance of each document thoroughly. Evelyn called me back the next day at 11 in the morning from her office. She didn't promise to save me or tell me everything would be okay. Instead, she gave me specific instructions I needed to follow carefully. "Don't talk to anyone at the company," she said firmly. "Don't try to contact former colleagues. Don't go near the building. Let this process move forward on its own completely. The board needs to conduct this investigation without any interference from you whatsoever. You need to disappear from this situation completely. Can you do that?" I told her I could do exactly that. She continued, "Good. The board will need time. This isn't going to happen overnight. Be patient. Don't do anything rash or emotional." She hung up without saying goodbye. I realized then that Evelyn wasn't going to help me for personal reasons or friendship. She was going to help me because what Briggs had done violated her principles about how people should be treated in the workplace. Within 3 days, something shifted at Harrison Tech. Rumors started spreading through the office about an investigation happening. HR began pulling staff members in for interviews with folders and recording devices. People talked in hushed tones during lunch breaks about what might be happening. Nobody knew where the investigation had come from or what had triggered it. Briggs started looking tense, pacing the hallways more than usual. He was making aggressive phone calls with his door closed. Wyatt avoided eye contact with everyone completely. They could both feel that something had changed, but they didn't know what it was. They had no idea that I was the source. They couldn't see my hand in it because I was completely invisible and hidden. I was at home, waiting patiently, letting the system do what it was designed to do. The foundation I had built was starting to crack beneath them visibly. I received text messages from people I had worked with asking if I knew what was happening. I didn't respond. I was following Evelyn's instructions precisely. I stayed silent. I stayed patient. I stayed focused on the bigger picture. Every day that passed, I knew the investigation was getting deeper, uncovering more layers of corruption and deception. 2 weeks later, corporate compliance launched a formal internal audit of the entire department. The announcement came from the board itself, which made it official and serious. The email went out to everyone in the morning. We are conducting a comprehensive review of the operations department operations and practices, it said. Briggs tried to act confident during meetings, but I heard from former colleagues who still called me that he was sweating through his shirts heavily. His hands shook slightly when he held documents. He told people that I was incompetent and had sabotaged the department. He said the audit would prove him right. But the audit revealed the truth. It showed that I had single-handedly run the entire department. My systems kept everything organized. My workflows prevented chaos. My documentation was the only thing holding everything together. The auditors interviewed current staff members about my role and my contributions. They discovered that I had been doing work that was never officially assigned to me. I had been fixing problems that nobody else could solve. I had been the glue that held the entire operation together. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Wyatt was questioned extensively during the audit for many hours. The auditors spent entire days with him. His answers contradicted months and months of records and logs and evidence. He got confused about basic procedures. He made up explanations that didn't match the timestamps. He said he had completed tasks that had been completed by me. When the auditors pressed him harder with concrete evidence, he panicked. He started stuttering. He threw Briggs under the bus immediately, admitting that his uncle had told him not to worry. He said Briggs had promised to protect him. He said Briggs had told him that I would take the blame. He confessed that he had been given his position solely because of family connections. He admitted that he had been told to act like he was doing work while I actually completed his assignments. The auditors recorded every word. They took notes on every confession. Nepotism was supposed to protect Wyatt. Instead, it exposed everything about how the system had been corrupted. His own confession sealed both his fate and his uncle's fate completely. Under pressure, Briggs started to slip and unravel completely. During a meeting with senior leadership, he raised his voice at someone. He only did that with subordinates normally. But in that room he was the lowest-ranking person. His outburst shocked everyone. They could see his mask falling away. They documented it officially. He had made a mistake. His behavior became increasingly erratic over the following days. He would snap at people. He would make irrational decisions. He would try to intimidate people who were investigating him, not realizing that only made things worse. He tried to contact me several times through mutual friends, asking me to tell them the truth and to reconsider. But I didn't respond to any of his attempts. I had nothing to say to him. He had made his choice, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. The board members noticed his deteriorating mental state. They realized he was becoming unstable. They knew they needed to act quickly before his behavior became even more problematic. The board decided to personally oversee Briggs' final review meeting. Evelyn sat in on it, which meant something serious. I heard from a friend who texted me updates. When Briggs entered and saw Evelyn sitting at the head of the table, his face went pale. He realized he was in real trouble. He didn't know that I was the reason she was there. His hands trembled visibly as he took his seat. He could sense that this wasn't going to be a routine conversation. He could feel the weight of the investigation bearing down on him. Evelyn had brought the audit findings. She had brought the recordings of his voice. She had brought the documentation of his sabotage. She had brought his nephew's confession. Everything was laid out on the table in front of him. He tried to maintain his composure, but you could see the fear in his eyes. He knew that his career was about to end. He knew that his reputation was about to be destroyed. He knew that he had no way out of this situation. Briggs was presented with copies of everything. The recordings of his voice screaming filled the room. The emails where he took credit were displayed. The documents showing altered files were laid out. The evidence of retaliation was undeniable. His face went gray. He stuttered. He sweated. He realized he had crafted his own downfall. Evelyn played the recordings of him screaming at me in his office. He heard his own voice saying things he denied ever saying. He heard the venom in his tone. He heard himself making accusations that had no basis in reality. He tried to interrupt, but Evelyn held up her hand and told him to listen. She then presented the email evidence. Emails where he had rewritten my work and taken credit. Emails where he had instructed staff to ignore my guidance. Emails where he had orchestrated the plan to eliminate my position. He tried to claim these emails were taken out of context. But Evelyn showed him the full chains of emails. Every single one told a clear story of calculated sabotage and deliberate retaliation. By the end of the presentation, Briggs was shaking visibly. He knew he was finished. Briggs was fired that afternoon. It wasn't handled quietly. His exit was witnessed by the same people who had watched him humiliate me. Life came full circle. He walked out carrying a box of personal items, just like I had done, except everyone knew why he was leaving. Security escorted him out of the building just as they had escorted me out. People watched from their cubicles. Some people looked satisfied. Others looked concerned. Everyone understood that justice had been served. Briggs had been caught red-handed. He had been exposed completely. His career at Harrison Tech was over. His reputation was destroyed. The company issued a statement saying that Briggs Turner had been terminated for violations of company policy. The statement mentioned retaliation and misconduct. It didn't name me specifically, but everyone knew what had happened. News of his firing spread through the office like wildfire. People texted me immediately. "He's gone," they said. They fired him. I received dozens of messages from current and former colleagues expressing their support and admiration. Wyatt was removed from the company a week later for falsified work and incompetence. He tried to blame Briggs for everything. Nobody cared about his excuses. He became a ghost in the industry. Other companies decided not to hire him. His career ended before it started. Wyatt's termination was handled quietly and efficiently. The company gave him a severance package in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement. He couldn't talk about what had happened at Harrison Tech. He couldn't badmouth the company. He couldn't explain his side of the story to potential employers. Within weeks, I heard that Wyatt had moved back in with his parents. He tried to get jobs at other companies, but no one would hire him. Background checks revealed his history of poor performance. References from Harrison Tech were lukewarm at best. His career in technology had ended before it really began. He had been given every advantage because of his uncle's position, but he had thrown it all away. His incompetence and lack of integrity had destroyed him just as surely as Briggs' corruption had destroyed Briggs. Evelyn called me to meet in person 2 days after Briggs was fired. We met at a coffee shop near the office on a Thursday morning. She ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. She told me the board was impressed by my documentation and professionalism. She paused and delivered the real news. The board wanted me back. Not at my old job. They were offering me a position 2 levels above where I started. Senior Operations Lead. I would oversee the entire department that Briggs had controlled. The salary was a significant increase. I would get a corner office on the executive floor. I would have a budget to hire new staff. I would have the authority to implement changes. I would be reporting directly to the board. When Evelyn told me the salary figure, I had to sit down. It was nearly double what I had been making. It was life-changing money. She also told me that the board wanted to offer me a formal apology. They wanted to acknowledge the injustice that had been done to me. They wanted to make it right. I asked if I could think about it. She smiled and said I had 24 hours. I knew I was going to say yes. I walked back into the building on my first day as Senior Operations Lead. Same lobby. Same elevator. Same hallways. Everything looked exactly as it had been, but everything felt completely different. My energy had changed. My position had changed. The entire dynamic had shifted. I was introduced to the staff as their new leader. People who had pitied me now respected me. They understood that I had survived something difficult. I set about rebuilding the department. I implemented better systems. I created a culture where good work was recognized. I made sure that people like me were finally seen and valued. I hired 3 new specialists to replace the positions that Briggs and Wyatt had occupied. I brought in talented people from other departments. I implemented new workflows that were more efficient and transparent. I created a mentorship program to help junior employees develop their skills. I established a system of recognition where good work was publicly acknowledged. I held weekly team meetings where everyone's contributions were discussed and valued. I made it a point to remember people's names and ask about their families. I created a workplace where people actually wanted to come to work. Within 3 months, the department's productivity had increased by 40%. Morale was at an all-time high. I never heard from Briggs again after that day. But information travels through professional networks. I learned that he couldn't find work anywhere. No company wanted to hire a director with a record of retaliation and misconduct. His professional reputation was destroyed permanently. He moved to another state. He tried to get work in a different city, but his reputation preceded him. Background checks revealed his termination from Harrison Tech references were poor. No one wanted to take a chance on him. I heard through the grapevine that he had to take a job at a much smaller company for a fraction of his previous salary. His career trajectory had completely reversed. He went from being a director at a prestigious tech company to working as a middle manager at a struggling firm. He had lost everything because of his own actions. As I sat in my office one afternoon, looking out at the team I had built, I reflected on everything that had happened. The office was different now. It was alive with energy and collaboration. People weren't afraid to speak up. They weren't worried about being blamed for things they didn't do. They weren't looking over their shoulders. They were focused on doing good work. Some people try to bury you because they know your growth exposes their incompetence. But they always forget one crucial thing. Buried things grow roots. They push through the soil. They become stronger underground. They develop resilience through pressure. And eventually, they break through to the surface, more powerful than ever before. That's what I did. That's who I became. Became a leader. I became an inspiration. I became proof that justice exists if you're patient enough and brave enough to pursue it.